Good morning. Happy Monday. I want to share what I am learning in real time. The books that I have been reading and listening to are in correlation with where I am right now, what I'm currently experiencing. And I'm going to share with you a little bit of this book called Safe People. Safe People. And this book is by Dr. Henry Cloud and Dr. John Townsend. Safe People. How to find relationships that are good for you and avoid the ones that aren't. And in chapter 12, learning how to be safe. The biggest thing for me in this season is asking for help. Okay. So I want to share a little bit about learning how to be safe. Have you ever wondered what you would do once you identified a safe person? There are several major tasks and opportunities ahead of you, after you have made the connection. Let's take a look at what you need to do to be safe. These efforts will lead you into deeper connections with God's people, which will sustain you for life and growth. Learn to ask for help. It isn't easy to ask for help, and it's risky. It's obviously the first key in having our safe people help nourish and mature us. In her counseling group, Stacy began to understand how terrified she was of allowing people who could give to her to get inside of her. Where, if at all, do you see yourself in this description of Stacy? Do you need to tell someone that you are empty inside, that you have weaknesses and insecurities, and that you want him or her to tell you that he or she cares about you even when you're weak? Be specific about what's holding you back. And if you have taken risky and a difficult step to finally ask for help, and what happened? What did you learn? What did you let yourself receive from the person who offered their help? So yesterday, I asked for help. I am currently a student in school for counseling, and I realized that I needed a mentor. There's certain questions that I had. There's certain things that I just do not understand. And I know someone who is a counselor, and I asked this person if they could mentor me. Do you know that was the hardest thing? That was the hardest thing I could do. And it was crazy that it was hard. I was taught that you don't ask for it, you just figure it out. Like, you just figure it out, or you don't, right? And so asking for help, and the person was like, yeah, what do I need to do? And I was like, okay, cool. So I just have questions about certain things, and I want to be able to, to reach out and talk to you about some questions that I have. And it's like, okay, we'll talk. Look at here. It was hard, but it was easy. And I'm so glad that I pushed past that resistance. So whenever you feel that resistance, that's when you really got to do that thing. And I know it's uncomfortable, but you have to do it. God places a high premium on the value of asking directly for help. Forms of the word acts appear almost 800 times in the Bible. Many of them an invitation from God for us to ask for things. What are some of the things God invites us to ask for? See Matthew 21-22, James 4:2, and 1 John chapter 3, verses 22. Talk about how difficult or easy it is for you to ask God for things, even when He extends the invitation. Why is asking difficult? Learning to ask for love is important, and here are a few reasons why. When we ask, we develop humility. Why is humility important to our spiritual health and growth? Okay. When we ask, we're owning our needs. When we ask, we're taking initiative. When we ask, we're developing a grateful character. Asking increases the odds that we'll get something. What else? Learn to need. Like the patients in the Bronx Garden, those of us who have been emotionally detached may also have lost our ability to connect to the outside world. Our needs sleep within us. A genuine sense of rich connection to others is absent. Take a moment Now to evaluate your ability to need. When have unmet needs caused the real hurt? How long have you been disconnected from relationships? Does something inside of you resonate when you read, you may have been hurt, deprived, and disconnected from the relationship so long that you need to simply, you may have been hurt and deprived or disconnected from relationship for so long that the need simply died, leaving you with no experience of wanting connection. If so, learning to need is vital for you. For God created you to long for attachment. He designed your needs to tell you when you're empty. You can regain your experience of the neediness. After all, God is in the business of redeeming what was lost, including defranchised parts of our soul. Confess your ability to need. Confess your ability to need. When has admitting that something is hard for you been freeing and made something easier to do? Be specific and know that the same principle works when it comes to admitting our inability to need. Don't fake it. Keep your boundaries. Confess the need that you can't experience. Pay attention to what evokes your hunger. Work through the resistance. That's the main part right there, working through the resistance. Because resistance is our tendency to avoid growth. It's our drive to keep the spiritual and emotional status quo. It's our inclination to move away from God's provisions for our growth. Romans 7:15. After all, we all have resistance. We all have resistance. Identify your resistances. Bring them into the relationship. Meet the needs of underlying the resistance. Do the opposite of what the resistance tells you. That's the key part. Do the opposite of what the resistance is telling you. And invite the truth about yourself. Invite the truth about yourself. One of the most valuable things you can do with your safe people, ranking right up there with asking for help, needing and melting resistance, is simply invite the truth about yourself. God often uses people to answer our prayer and reveal to us our blind spots about ourselves. Regularly asking 2 questions of our safe people. What do I do that pushes you away from me? What do I do that draws you towards me? Can help you learn more about yourself and love, limits, and goodness and badness in relationships. So those are some questions that you can ask, safe people. What do I do that pushes you away from me? What do I do that draws you towards me? Use the data from these questions. When you ask these questions, you are saying several important things to the people: that you value them and you trust them. Many people are terrified to receive feedback from people. I'm one of them. Working on that. The truth is your friend. When people feel free to tell the truth, they will be completely honest. Life substances is relationships. Learn to forgive in our relationships. Will you forgive me for hurting you? Learn to forgive. Learn to give forgiveness. Forgiveness is not about the other person. It's about ourselves. Forgiveness is not about the other person. It is about ourselves. So the key point I wanted to share was learning to ask for help. Learning to ask for help. That was a huge thing for me this past weekend. That was my biggest lesson I had experienced, is learning to ask for help and knowing that it is okay to ask for help. I know that sometimes we have been conditioned to think that it's not okay to ask for help, but you have to ask for help, especially if you only know what you know, right? There are people who are more advanced, have more knowledge, more wisdom in certain areas that you just don't have. And you have not because you ask not. So make sure that you are asking for help, asking for what you need, okay? So if you ain't heard nothing else, ask for what you need. It is important. I'm telling you, I asked and I was like, oh, that felt good. I feel relieved. And it made a world of difference. And I'm so excited that I'm pushing past the resistance. I'm noticing things about myself that are unsafe, right? Because unsafe people attract other unsafe people. So I want to make sure I am safe and I am attracting other safe people, and people feel comfortable and confident enough to confront me and to talk to me about whatever they need to talk to me about. So that is all I have on this Monday.